There's something magnetic about a woman who knows her worth. She doesn't need to announce it, prove it, or demand attention. Her silence speaks louder than noise. Her calm carries more power than arrogance, and her presence can shift an entire room without her saying a word. You can sense it. That quiet confidence that doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't compete. It's not pride. It's peace. And for those who meet her, that energy is unforgettable. She's not the loudest in the room, nor the one constantly seeking validation. She's the woman who understands that her value isn't determined by how much she gives to others, but by how deeply she respects herself. She has learned that saying no isn't rejection, it's self-protection. That walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And that loving herself isn't selfish, it's survival. Men remember women like her. They might not admit it, but they feel it. Because when you meet a woman who knows her worth, she changes how you see love. She won't let you take her for granted, and she won't shrink to make you feel taller. She will love you fully, but only if you meet her as an equal. And if you can't, she'll quietly step back, and you'll never forget her absence. In a world where too many confuse kindness for weakness, a woman like this is a revelation. She doesn't seek to be understood. She seeks to understand herself. She's been through heartbreak, disappointment, and betrayal, yet she no longer looks for healing in the hands that hurt her. Instead, she's learned to build her peace from within. And that peace is where her power lies. This story isn't about perfection. It's about transformation, about how pain shaped her boundaries, how solitude sharpened her strength, and how self-respect became her quiet rebellion. Because when a woman realizes her worth, the world can never treat her the same again. And maybe that's the part that scares people the most. When a woman truly knows her worth, she no longer looks for validation in other people's approval, because she's learned that validation built on temporary attention always collapses. Her sense of value comes from experience, not compliments, from silence, not applause, from falling apart and putting herself back together, again and again, until she realized no one else could do it for her. That's what gives her a quiet kind of strength, the kind that doesn't need to be seen to be felt. She's learned that not every opinion deserves her energy and not every connection deserves her time, and this understanding becomes the foundation of her power. She's not trying to convince anyone to choose her anymore. She's already chosen herself. When she was younger, she probably gave too much. Too much love, too much patience, too many chances. She used to confuse sacrifice with affection, believing that if she gave enough, she'd finally be loved the way she deserved. But eventually, she learned that people don't value what's freely given when it comes at the cost of self-respect. Through pain, she discovered balance, the art of loving deeply without losing herself. She doesn't withhold her heart out of fear, but she gives it more wisely now. She's become selective, not bitter, careful, not cold. Her kindness has boundaries, and those boundaries are sacred. A woman who knows her worth doesn't argue for her place in someone's life. She observes how they make space for her. If she's constantly fighting for the bare minimum, she knows it's time to walk away. That calm detachment isn't indifference. It's clarity. She no longer begs for love or attention, because she understands that begging for it will never make it real. When she feels disrespected, she doesn't explode. She exits. When she senses manipulation, she doesn't react. She distances. It's not that she's heartless. It's that she's healed enough to know what peace costs. Her silence is her greatest weapon. When others expect drama, she gives them dignity. When they expect tears, she gives them distance. That's the power of emotional control. It unsettles those who once relied on her softness to feel powerful. She no longer chases closure, explanations, or apologies because her self-worth no longer depends on external validation. She's learned to forgive not for them, but for her own peace. And that forgiveness doesn't always mean reconnection. It means release. The kind of release that lets her breathe again, sleep again, smile again. In relationships, she doesn't look for someone to complete her. She looks for someone who complements her. She values emotional maturity, not empty promises. She's drawn to consistency, not chemistry. She doesn't confuse attention for affection anymore, because she knows how fleeting attention can be. The man who wins her heart won't do it by trying to impress her. He'll do it by respecting her. Because deep down, she's tired of being the one who understands everyone. She's waiting for someone who finally understands her. When a woman knows her worth, she becomes unshakable. Not because life stops testing her, but because she's no longer afraid to be alone. Solitude doesn't scare her anymore. It strengthens her. She knows that being alone with peace is far better than being surrounded by chaos disguised as love. And that realization, that deep, quiet understanding of what she deserves, is where her true power begins. It's a power that can't be taken, only earned. A power that doesn't shout, it radiates. And those who encounter her will either rise to her level or fade from her life. There's no in-between. There comes a moment in every woman's life when the lessons of her past begin to speak louder than her emotions. For the woman who knows her worth, that moment isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet, almost invisible to the outside world. But inside her, something shifts forever. She no longer reacts the way she used to. The same words that once broke her now meet silence. The same situations that once drained her now receive no energy at all. That's when people around her start to notice the difference. They can feel her pulling back, reclaiming herself. And for those who once took her kindness for granted, that change is unsettling. They start to realize that the woman they could once manipulate with charm or guilt is gone. What stands before them now is someone they can't reach in the same way anymore. She becomes unpredictable, not because she's playing games, but because she no longer participates in them. Her stillness becomes powerful. When someone tries to provoke her, she doesn't respond. When someone tries to test her, she smiles instead of arguing. That quiet composure confuses people who are used to control through chaos. Her detachment becomes her armor, and her self-respect becomes her shield. Deep down, she knows that nothing is more disarming than a woman who refuses to be shaken. And this is where her silence begins to speak for her. It says, "I know who I am now. I don't need to prove it anymore." But it's not easy getting to this stage. There are nights when she still questions herself, when she wonders if maybe she's being too cold, too distant, too guarded. That's the tug-of-war between her old self and her new one. The old self wants to fix things, to understand, to hold on, while the new self whispers, "You've done enough." It's a painful evolution, shedding the version of herself that once believed love meant endurance. But this time, she's not losing herself in the process of caring. She's learning to love differently, from strength, not fear. Those around her start to feel the void her absence creates. The people who once underestimated her suddenly begin to remember her differently. They replay the moments when she was patient, understanding, forgiving, and they realize how rare that kind of love was. They start to miss her presence, the calm she brought, the way she made things feel lighter just by being there. But by the time they realize it, she's already walked too far into her own peace to look back. That's the irony of knowing your worth. By the time others see it, you've already outgrown their recognition. In her solitude, she doesn't crumble. She rebuilds. She starts focusing on herself in ways she never did before. She reads more, thinks deeper, works harder, and begins to glow in her own rhythm. Her energy changes. It becomes grounded, magnetic, unexplainable. She attracts new experiences and people who match her new vibration. They see her differently because she carries herself differently. There's a maturity in her silence now, a depth in her eyes that comes only from surviving disappointment and still choosing to believe in herself. And when she meets someone new, she doesn't rush. She doesn't fall for words. She watches actions. She listens, observes, and lets time do the talking, because she knows that love built in a hurry often ends in heartbreak. She's not interested in intensity. She wants consistency. She's not chasing sparks. She's building stability. Every step she takes now is deliberate, calm, and aligned with her values. Her boundaries are no longer walls. They're filters. Only those who respect her peace get close. And that kind of power, the ability to choose rather than chase, is what makes her unforgettable. But what people don't see is how much strength it takes to maintain that peace. It's not that she doesn't feel pain. She just doesn't let it rule her anymore. It's not that she doesn't care. She's just learned that caring doesn't always mean staying. Her silence is not emptiness. It's the space she creates to protect her growth. It's the pause she takes before reacting, the deep breath before walking away, the grace she gives herself to not repeat old patterns. That's the silent transformation, the part no one applauds because it happens behind closed doors. She becomes the kind of woman who no longer fears endings. She understands that not everything meant to enter her life is meant to stay, and instead of clinging, she allows things to flow naturally. That surrender, like that quiet acceptance mine, becomes her freedom. People start to notice that she moves differently now, with ease, with assurance. They can feel her energy before she even speaks, and deep down they know. She's no longer the woman they once knew. She's stronger, softer, and far more powerful in her silence than she ever was in her struggle. The truth is, the most powerful transformation happens when a woman realizes she doesn't need to prove her worth to anyone, not even to herself. That's the final secret. The quiet revelation she comes to after years of giving, healing, and rebuilding. It's when she stops asking, "Am I enough?" and starts saying, "I am." That moment doesn't arrive with fanfare or applause. It arrives in stillness. Maybe she's sitting alone in her favorite cafe, or standing in front of a mirror one morning when she notices how calm she feels in her own skin. There's no urge to be more, do more, or win someone's approval. She's simply content being herself, and that peace feels like freedom. She understands now that worth isn't something to be earned. It's not found in someone's affection, status, or validation. Worth is constant. It's the quiet truth that remains even when the world tries to convince her otherwise. The world told her that strength meant never breaking, but she's learned that real strength is breaking and still choosing to love again. The world told her that independence meant not needing anyone, but she's learned that independence means choosing yourself even when you have someone beside you. And the world told her that silence meant weakness, but she's learned that silence is where her greatest power lives. Those who once doubted her begin to see the difference too. They can't quite describe it, but they feel it. The way she carries herself, the way she speaks, everything about her radiates certainty. She doesn't chase closure anymore, because she's learned that sometimes the only closure you'll ever get is accepting what happened and letting go. She doesn't fight to be understood, because she knows that those who truly see her won't need explanations. She doesn't compete for love, because she's already learned that love that demands competition isn't love at all. Her worth no longer depends on what she receives. It lives in what she gives herself. And here's the part that makes her unforgettable. Not just to others, but to herself. Once a woman experiences her own strength, she can never go back to who she was. She might forgive, but she won't forget. She might still love, but she'll never settle. She'll smile, but her eyes will carry the calm of someone who's been through the storm and found herself in the wreckage. She becomes the kind of woman people remember not because she tried to impress them, but because her energy leaves an imprint. The kind of woman who walks away quietly, but leaves a silence that echoes for years. Her power lies in her restraint. She doesn't respond to every insult, doesn't explain every decision, doesn't prove every point. Her silence says everything her words don't need to. When others try to test her limits, she doesn't bend. She simply steps back. Because she knows that peace is expensive, and she's no longer willing to pay for it with her self-respect. The more she chooses herself, the stronger she becomes. The more she chooses peace, the clearer her life becomes. And that clarity, that rare inner stillness, is what draws people toward her, even when she's not trying to be noticed. But the true climax of her journey isn't in how others see her. It's in how she sees herself. She starts to understand that she was never hard to love. She was just loving the wrong people. She was never too much. She was giving too much to those who gave too little. And she was never cold. She was simply tired of being burned. That realization is liberating. It's the moment she stops blaming herself for what others couldn't give and starts thanking herself for surviving what almost broke her. This is where she becomes untouchable, not in the sense of being unreachable or emotionless, but in the sense that no one can take her back to the version of herself that doubted her worth. She has learned that losing people isn't always a loss. Sometimes it's a blessing disguised as heartbreak. Every person who walked away made space for the woman she was always meant to become. Every disappointment taught her the value of peace. Every ending showed her that her story didn't end there. It was just being rewritten with more wisdom and grace. And so, when she looks back now, she doesn't see failure. She sees growth. She sees a timeline of strength hidden behind every heartbreak. She sees a woman who was once afraid of being alone, now at peace in her solitude. She sees a woman who once tried to be understood, now content in her mystery. And most importantly, she sees a woman who no longer measures her worth by how much she is loved, but by how much she has learned to love herself. That's the secret, the silent, powerful truth. The woman who knows her worth doesn't need to be remembered to matter, but she always is. In the end, the silent power of a woman who knows her worth is not about dominance, rebellion, or pride. It's about peace. It's about the calm she carries when she no longer feels the need to chase what was never meant for her. You can see it in her eyes. That unshakable peace that only comes from walking through the fire and realizing she didn't need saving. She saved herself, and that changes everything. She no longer seeks validation because she's learned that her worth isn't a question, it's a fact. The noise of the world no longer drowns her inner voice, because now she listens to herself above all else. When she knows her worth, her life becomes beautifully simple. She doesn't beg for attention. She attracts respect. She doesn't over-explain. She lets her actions speak. She doesn't compete. She rises silently. People start to sense that calm strength in her presence, that unspoken energy that demands sincerity. She has become the kind of woman who doesn't raise her voice to be heard. She speaks softly, and the world leans in. And what's truly fascinating is that she's not driven by ego anymore. She's driven by truth. Her worth is no longer tied to what she achieves, who she loves, or how others see her. It lives quietly within her. Many will try to understand her, few truly will. Because her power isn't loud and it's subtle. It's the kind that intimidates people who still seek approval, and inspires those who've begun their own journey of self-worth. She's not perfect, and she doesn't pretend to be. She just knows that perfection was never the goal. Peace was. And in that peace, she becomes magnetic. The same people who once took her for granted start to remember her in moments of silence. They think about how she used to bring calm into chaos, how she used to give without asking for anything in return, and how she disappeared so gracefully that it left an ache. That's the power of a woman who knows her worth. Her absence speaks louder than her presence ever did. The truth is, when a woman realizes her worth, she changes everything she touches. Relationships shift, friendships evolve. Even her energy transforms the space she's in. She doesn't chase anymore. Not love, not attention, not closure. Because she knows that what's meant for her will never need to be forced. She doesn't live for approval anymore. She lives for alignment. Her days become lighter, her boundaries stronger, and her dreams clearer. Every no she gives now protects the peace she once begged for. And maybe that's the ultimate lesson her story teaches us, that the most powerful version of a woman is the one who no longer needs to prove she's powerful. Her silence holds truth, her peace holds strength, and her presence, even in absence, lingers like a quiet reminder of what self-love truly looks like. Because a woman who knows her worth doesn't just change her own life, she changes the standard for everyone around her. And once she's found that strength, she never loses it again. If this story spoke to something deep within you, if you've ever been that woman who had to learn her worth the hard way, or the man who finally understood what it meant too late, don't just let it end here. Take a moment, reflect, and carry that awareness with you, because the world needs more people who understand quiet strength, not just loud confidence. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Stories that remind you of your value, your peace, and your power. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Because sometimes, all it takes is one reminder that you were never hard to love. They were just not ready to meet someone who knew her worth.